Hello, and welcome back to RPS at Home. I'm Major Scott, and I teach 6th and 7th grade English at Franklin Military Academy. You're probably wondering, Major, what is that? Well, at Franklin, students and staff are given honorary titles when they're not actually in the armed forces. Teachers are either captain their first 3 years or major once they've worked at Franklin for 4 or more years. But that's enough about me. Let's get started. This is 6th grade English Language Arts, and we will be comparing and contrasting with me, Major Scott. Why compare and contrast? Well, finding similarities and differences in new and old information helps us stay organized and helps us to better understand. It's also a necessary part of analyzing. For example, in my garden, I have this herb. It's green, it has 3 larger sections of leaf, and I know this herb as parsley. I know that I can use parsley fresh, I can dry it, I can chop it, and I can cook it. If I take another unknown herb or new herb from my garden and I compare and contrast it, I can see that this also has 3 sections of leaves. They're a little bit different in shape, maybe more round or wide, and this herb is definitely stronger smelling. So, taking those similarities and differences, I can probably infer that this herb can be used similarly to this herb in the kitchen, fresh, dried, chopped, or cooked. In the context of English, we can find similarities and differences in new text and old information that we already have to keep us organized and help us better understand. And we can also compare and contrast new text to new text to keep that new information organized and to help us better understand it. It's also used to analyze. Today, you and I will compare and contrast 2 texts on the same topic or theme. You'll need a pen or pencil and lined paper or the printed materials. Go ahead and get that out now. Today, we'll do a get to know you brainstorm before reading a poem titled Our House. I'll model compare and contrasting, and then you will compare and contrast on your own. Before we get started, I'd just like to review a few vocab terms. If you're not sure or don't remember these easily, you might want to write them down as well as their definition. An author is the person who writes or creates the text or material. The author's purpose is the reason why they're writing. And I like to remember purpose PI. P stands for persuade, I stands for inform, and E stands for entertain. So an author can write for either of those purposes to persuade, inform, or entertain. The message or the author's message goes hand in hand with their purpose. The message is what the author is trying to say or convey to their reader through their text. Let's go to the handout or the information. If you don't have it, you can just share my screen. All right, on the left-hand side is where we're going to brainstorm about our home. You're going to write everything about living in your home in this box on the left and go through each question prompt. Make sure that you answer each one. I'm going to do that by highlighting it to make sure as I go, to make sure that I don't skip any. The last question, what sets your home apart from others? I want that one to be in a complete sentence in this box at the bottom. If you're on your paper, maybe just circle that last part when you get to it. So let's take a few quiet minutes to answer these questions. If you're not still done answering your questions, go ahead and pause the video now, finish up answering all of them, and then hit play to resume. I'm going to go through some of my answers at this time. Um, at our house, well, I cook, eat, watch TV, go on my phone, read, do housework, and clean. Who's there? It's me, my mom, and my older brother. What does it look like? I think it's a mess. There's stuff everywhere. It's old. Our house is old. There's cracks in the walls. It's just a mess. Do different people have different opinions about your home? I think our house is a mess. I think it's cluttered, and I think that we need to toss out a lot of things. My mom thinks that our house is cozy, that these things are sentimental, valuable, our memories, they're our history, and a part of us. The last question, which I wrote in a complete sentence or sentences in that bottom message box. What sets your home apart from others? Our house is set apart from others in that it has character. I think what makes it different from other houses is that we are in it together. It would be boring if our house was entirely clean and modern, how I want it, or all cluttered with sentiments, how my mom wants it. I hope that you also completed those. We're going to go back to the slide for just a minute before reading the poem. There's a couple more vocabulary terms that I want to go over. So in writing our brainstorm, we were the author. Our purpose was probably to inform others in writing a description about our house, informing others what our home was like. And our messages may vary. My message at the bottom there was that I think our house has character. The new vocabulary that I want to review before we start reading a poem are on the right-hand side. Poems have an author, that's the person who wrote it, but it also has a speaker a lot of times. The speaker is the character in the poem who is doing the talking or the reflecting. It's not always the author, and we can't assume that it is. A stanza is a poem paragraph. So you'll see in a poem, yeah, our poem has stanzas. In our poem, you'll see chunks of text. Those poem paragraphs are called stanzas. I think you all know what a rhyme is. When two words have the same ending sound, they rhyme. But a rhyme scheme is the rhyming pattern. So you'll look at the last word in each line to determine the rhyme scheme. You don't have to know this stuff to compare and contrast, but I thought that it would be important to talk about it. Let's go to the Our House poem. All right, the poem is located back in the material if you scroll down below our brainstorm on the second page. I'd like you to take a minute to read the poem Our House by Edgar Guest. It's 4 stanzas. Take a minute or two and read it on your own. Go ahead and press pause now. I'd like you to listen one more time as I read the poem Our House aloud. Our House by Edgar Guest. We play at our house and have all sorts of fun, and there's always a game when supper is done. And at our house, there's marks on the walls and the stairs, and some terrible scratches on some of the chairs. And Ma says that our house is surely a fright, but Pa and I say that our house is all right. At our house, we laugh and sing and we shout, and whirl all the chairs and the tables about. And I wrestle my Pa and I get him down too, and he's all out of breath when the fighting is through. And Ma says our house is surely a sight, but Pa and I say that our house is all right. I've been to houses with Pa where I had to sit in a chair like a good little lad, and there wasn't a mark on the walls and the chairs, and the stuff that we have couldn't come up to theirs. And Pa said to Ma that for all of their joy, he wouldn't change places and give up his boy. They never have races, nor wrestles, nor fights, 'cause they have no children to play with at nights. And their walls are all clean, and their curtains hang straight, and everything shiny and right up to date. But Pa says that with all of this racket and fuss, he'd rather by far live at our house with us. at the top of your worksheet, I'd like you to complete this Venn diagram. It's not circles, it's squares, but it's the same function. So I want you to try to write at least 3 complete sentences in each section. You're going to be comparing what you wrote about your home and the poem Our House. The differences will go on the outer boxes, and the similarities will go in the center. If you're writing on your own paper, you can either fold it in like a trifold to have creases on your paper. You can draw 2 overlapping circles like a true Venn diagram, or you can even label my home, write a paragraph, similarities, a paragraph, in Our House, a paragraph. It doesn't necessarily have to be a graphic organizer. At the bottom, after you've completed the Venn diagram, I'd like you to try to write the speaker's message. So the speaker of the Our House poem, what are they trying to say or convey to their reader? And that's your independent practice for today. Tomorrow when you come back, make sure that you have this with you and we'll review some possible answers. Before we go, I'd like to give you all some independent reading ideas. You don't have to do it, but I think they're pretty fun. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right. So we've covered our agenda. We did the get to know you brainstorm. You read Our House and then I read it to you aloud. I modeled compare and contrast. And then you had your independent practice. We looked over all of our vocabulary terms. And what I'm going to suggest that you read today are the additional Edgar Guest poems. If you keep scrolling down in that practice document, there's a couple more poems by him that I think you'll really like. And as far as your writing practice for today, the first poem below Our Home in the practice document is called An Old-Fashioned Letter. So I suggest that today you write an old-fashioned letter. If you can't send it in the mail, maybe send a picture of it to the person that it's meant for. I'd also love to see your work. So if you want to send it to me, my email is mscott5@rvaschools.net. And that's all. I'll see you guys tomorrow.